Let me just unmute myself. Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Grant Talks Funny Bits. So each week we try and bring you someone that is a icon within the industry. We have people from all over the world kind of talking to us about their experiences on stage, their life stories, and how they got to where they are in a way to kind of share that experience, to share the knowledge that they've picked up, the tips and tricks, and their stories from the road. Tonight's guest is a absolute legend within the industry. He doesn't need much of an introduction, but I will give the best I can. This guy has 30 plus years as a professional stage hypnotist who has really kind of walked his talk. He is iconic within the American kind of grad and fair market. He has worked with people such as Jay Leno, Chris Rock, Heidi Klum, and Sylvester Stallone. He is literally a guy at the very top of his game, and he has been in this game for a very long time. So before we introduce tonight's guest, let me just do my little intro, and then we shall get on the one and only Mr. Jim Wand. And there he is. Oh, there he is. Is that side? It's one and only Mr. Jim Wand. Jim, how are you?
I am fantastic, Grant. Thank you for asking.
Oh, well, fantastic. It's you guys are in the middle of some craziness over there. You've got an election. You've got COVID. How are things? How are things show-wise at the moment?
Oh, the shows that I just finished doing my college tour. Typically, I do about 65 shows at this time of the year.
Nice.
But I started August 17th. We did about 25. Did most of them virtually or blended shows where we sitting right here. I did a show a couple weeks ago down in San Antonio, Texas. I did everything from right here. And
that's absolutely
went
fantastic.
on a Zoom format and then live streamed it to their college Facebook page. And they've worked out well. So
yeah. How was the transition for it's never going to be the same, but how did you find that transition from kind of going from a live show where you've got hundreds, if not thousands of people in the audience feeding that energy? How did that translate to doing it over Zoom?
Sure. Well, the nice thing about it is no travel, of course, but you're not going to get exactly the same response off a show where you don't have, like, let's say you just have 10 volunteers, of anybody in the audience. So you're not going to get much as much response or interaction. Plus, we have where the chairs are spaced out on stage. We also don't touch them. They're wearing masks. We have to do different alternative things to get them to respond. Now, we've had some really great shows, but we've really had to adapt to get it done. And luckily, every one of them has worked out. So the 25 that we did do, they all worked out great. So, but now we're down again for, I got a couple holiday shows in December. We'll see how they go, and then we'll see what the new year brings.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a couple of hellos as well. We've got Alana Jennings from the UK. She says, good evening. She says, it looks like it's a lot sunnier where you are right now. So, yeah, I don't know what part of the US you're in, but you do look to be in a nice sunny part.
Well,
Jeff,
I'm about 3 hours west of Chicago. We're having really unusual weather. Today, this whole week's been in the 70s, and typically that's about 20 degrees above where it normally is. So I guess you could say things are heating up over here.
Definitely. Jeff Bennett says hi, Jim, as well. And Kendra Summers says hello as well. And Choi Saunders says hi as well. So we've got a few people tuning in to say hello. Kendra, if you're watching, you enjoy the show, send me a message as well. I'd love to get you on as well. You'd make a great guest. But back to Jim. So, Jim, 30 years as a professional stage hypnotist, I can imagine you have seen some very dramatic changes in audiences and how people accept stage hypnosis. But going back before that, what did you do before you were a stage hypnotist? Before you were the legend that is Jim Wand?
Yeah, I was a school counselor, kindergarten through 12th grade school counselor. And I was about my third year in, I really became interested in hypnosis. So I got trained and I opened up an office, and it just blew up overnight. And I ended up doing, so I finally had to get out of the counseling because I was doing 8 to 10 sessions a day in my clinic.
Nice.
And then I got some other people trained. And it's interesting. At that point in time, I was definitely against stage hypnosis. And then I saw a show that Larry Garrett did. And a lot of people listening in today, probably because he's definitely an icon in the field of hypnosis. He's out of Chicago. And I really liked the way he presented it. So my negative thoughts of stage hypnosis, because the only things I'd seen on stage, the performer was on a real power trip, or he or she didn't really treat the people on stage with dignity, didn't really explain what hypnosis was, or gave anybody the desire to want to be hypnotized after seeing a show.
Yeah.
So I was, when I saw Larry's, that totally changed. And then Larry kind of quit doing stage. And the same college where Larry was doing the stage, I had graduated from, Loras College in Dubuque, Iowa, which is a Midwestern part of the country. And I got a call from the activity director there. Now, when I had seen Larry's show, there's a very small audience, about 50 people. So I had been doing stage hypnosis I've been doing hypnosis, self-hypnosis seminars there. And we're getting about 60 or 70 people, but I was getting well known in the area for the individual hypnosis. And when he asked me to come over, he's a friend of mine who was activity director. I get there and there's 800 students. And I think, wow, students pay to be entertained. Maybe they don't pay to be educated. But anyway, that's how I got started. And overnight, I went from probably 5 hypnosis shows to the first year I did 140. And a lot of them were on the college circuit. And then it kept on growing and growing and growing. And at one time, I was doing as many as 400 shows a year. Of course, that was with some of the fairs and festivals where you do 3 or 4 shows a day and you do them for 10 or 15 days in a row. And then I just kind of started healing down. I'm still doing about, well, not this year, knock on wood, but I'm still doing about 150, 200 shows a year. But I'm slowly cutting down because I'm doing the ones that I want to and giving the other ones to other people who I know do a good job.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing as well as being a performer yourself. You have an agency and you have other hypnotists and other performers that work through you as well. So that must bring some challenges with it as well. I mean, I know what performers can be like to work with. So that could be quite interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, especially in the industry we're in, where there's a lot of people that sell the sizzle rather than the steak.
That's right.
And sometimes I've had guys do shows for me, and I've lost clients for it. A client that I've worked with for 10 years, I've recommended somebody, and it's never worked out well for me. So yeah.
And that's difficult. Now, typically, of all the shows I've put out over the years, I've had very few mishaps that way, but I have had a couple. And if I were to go back to day one, I'd probably never open up an agency. I probably would have just had a lot of agencies that were booking me, and I probably should have stayed there rather than becoming a booking agency, because that takes a lot of time and work.
Yes. So we got a question here. What's the most embarrassing show to date, Jim? What's the worst? I mean, I always like to talk about the worst show because for me, I've had a couple of bad shows in my time, and they're the ones that I absolutely learn the most from. And I think on some level, I think I learned that once that's happened, nothing worse could happen, and then it kind of gave me a bit more confidence, and that went on to help me out quite a lot. So, digging deep back into the archives, what was the most either embarrassing or the hardest show you've ever done?
Well, most hypnotists don't put up their embarrassing shows or the shows that they've got trouble with. So the ones you see out there are supposedly their best shows. And some of those I cringe at even. But, I've had so many things happen over the years. I guess one was a tough one because there's a lot of this college there were a lot of deaf students and they all wanted to be hypnotized. And I couldn't figure out how I could integrate deaf students with the regular, non-deaf volunteer list. So what I did was I did the show with the non-hearing impaired. This was at a college in Iowa. And then I had 15 hearing impaired students who wanted to get hypnotized. So I brought them up on stage. I had somebody stand behind each one of them and touch their shoulders. And then I had 2 signers behind me, and all 15 of them got hypnotized. And it was a great show. So I'm looking at no matter what the challenge is, you can make it into a success. But I've had some embarrassing ones. I've had things happen. I'm writing a book right now with my mishaps on the road. Like I had a guy bite me in the backside, and I had to get 2 stitches when I was doing a dog show. I had the sheep fiasco in Wisconsin. I got arrested in Kansas for doing stage hypnosis because Well, at one time, stage hypnosis was illegal in both Kansas and Oregon, 2 of our states. And I'd been doing a show in this college in Kansas every year for 6 years. Great show. Always had great crowds. And I got there for my 7th year, and 3 police officers arrived and said, Jim, we've seen your show and we love it. But if you go on stage, we have to arrest you and also arrest anybody you hypnotize.
Wow.
And the reason was that the local newspaper person didn't really see eye to eye with the college activities person. So that's how it came up. Now, if the people on stage wouldn't have gotten arrested, I would have gone off the show anyway. But they were going through, so I wasn't going to do that. And that 2 years later, then it was rescinded in Kansas, also rescinded in Oregon. So that helped. But I would say probably the dog bite is the most infamous. And every show that I do, I always ask the people, and I do a lot of colleges every year, and I do a lot of corporate shows. I've done just about every type of show you can imagine, but the college shows, there's big crowds, like anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 students. And one of the student programmers asked me if I could do something with the dog show. At that time, there's a show on here, Stupid Pet Tricks, on David Letterman. He used to be a night talk show, and they do stupid pet tricks. So he said, well, can you do something with stupid pet tricks? I thought, sure. Well, I had all the guys become purebred show dogs.
Nice.
I had all the girls become their trainers. They got them in a nice line to present. And I went down the line and asked the presenters the name of the dog, the breed of the dog, and the trick it was going to do. And after the 4th dog, I thought, this is great. I'm going to do this every time. Well, it was great until I got to the 5th dog. The 5th dog's name was Jojo. He was a pit bull, and he's going to do a backflip, right? Cool. I turned around to the 6th dog, and this is no lie, he bit me right in the backside.
Oh.
And he bit me hard enough to break the skin. So I had blood running down my leg, right? Inside my jeans. After the show, I thought I'd get it checked out. So I went to the local ER. And number one, explaining to the ER doctor that somebody had bit me in the backside, made me bleed. That was a tough one. So I kind of backed away from the dog show, or at least put restrictions on it. So I think I've learned something from every show I've done, and I'm sure you can say the same thing. There are things you never do again. But I'm getting ready to put a book together, actually, with all the mishaps on the road, and I'm up to 70 mishaps, right? Well, 70 things that happened that were unique in some way.
So we've got a couple of comments on that. A couple of people said that that's ace, and Malcolm Sparks, who's a great guy from here in the UK as well, just says great guest this evening, Grant. So one of the things about the book is, like you said, a lot of stage hypnotists, they kind of sell that sizzle. They don't put out the stuff the way they make the mistakes. And you'll be the same as me. If a new stage hypnosis book comes out, I have to buy it. I have to read the stories in it. And there's a lot of those books where you can tell that the person that's wrote it doesn't necessarily have the experience on the road as such. There's a lot of theory. There's a lot of rehash stuff in there. So your stories of the road, I'm very much looking forward to reading. So do you know what kind of time frame, not to put any pressure on you, but do you know what kind of time frame you've got for that book to be done?
It'll probably be sometime next spring. I'm doing a lot of things right now that are a little different. So probably sometime next spring. I'm just gathering all the information. I sit down and all of a sudden another story comes up that I remember. And I thought, wow, I'll have to put that in there too. And these are all true stories that will come out. They're true stories. But I found, Grant, that one time I was really critical of myself of the mistakes that I made on stage. But I come to realize, bottom line is, nobody knows it but me. The audience doesn't know I'm a mistake. And some of my biggest mistakes turned into be some of my best bits. So I learned to go with the flow as long as the people on stage were safe. And I started having something happen, and I'd go see what happens. And like I say, they've turned into some of my best bits over the years.
Yeah, I must admit, it's amazing how the inspiration can come from the volunteers sometimes. And like you said, that develops into a unique skit that's yours that is brilliant. Yeah. Fantastic. So you've said about your worst show effectively. There's got to be a standout show, a show that is the one that, if you had to relive in your memory that show, what is the best show you've done to date so far?
Well, I do the something here called the National FFA Convention. It used to be Future Farmers of America. Now it's just an acronym now, but I do this every year, except for this year. They have their national convention, and I do it as a fundraiser for FFA Foundation, and we should get about 3,000 people per show. And I mean, you couldn't do anything wrong. Anything you'd say, there'd be 3 or 4 people that would be outstanding on stage. Yeah. So whether like I did a hypnotic bull show because it's a farming group, and I made them. I told the trainers that the bulls would be very exotic. They'd be like maybe a Holstein, which is a milk cow crossed with some kind of a dinosaur, and they have the name, and then they make they walk around the stage and they do different things. And it just got to be so exciting that every time I go there now, they want me to do something with an animal show, and it blends right in with it. So, great shows. I mean, there's been so many shows out there. You kind of remember the ones that you want to forget them, but the ones that were a lot more difficult. But I will tell the people listening, the difficult shows are the ones that make you a great hypnotist and a great entertainer. Yeah. You just go on with it because nobody's going to know if you make a mistake. Nobody's going to know it, but you are. No. You know. So a lot of people come down on themselves, and I always critique my shows. And what I also do, every show I do, I make record of everything I did during that show. Yes. And then because a lot of colleges I've done for 30 consecutive years, I change the show every year. So it forces me to be creative because I've seen some hypnotists out there who never change their shows, and it kind of takes the spice out of them, and they kind of get in a rut sometimes. And it's easy to do, but if you're working on new material and trying to please your client, you'll find that doesn't happen as much. So that's kind of the way I approach it now.
Yeah, brilliant. That brilliant advice as well on keeping the information fresh. So we've got a question here from Kendra. She says, how do you see the things for the future of stage hypnosis? Where do you see stage hypnosis going into?
That's a really good question. There's a lot of stage hypnotists out there now. I can't say they're giving hypnosis a bad name, but they're not taking the time to learn the intricacies, because the show itself, my personal opinion, the show itself is only 40%. It's a preparation, putting things together for that show, and then actually get on stage and doing it, and then doing your follow-up too. So I think too many people want to go in, do a good job, and get paid, which is great. But to build a following, you need to give them more. Yeah. So I give them I go in and I ask them, is there anything I can do for them? Many years ago, I was doing a show in North Dakota. And when I went in to do the show, the person who hired me, the activity director, said, well, you're a lot different than the hypnotist last year. And I said, well, why is that? Well, last year he came in a cape, and he turned around and wanted me to take his cape off. Well, you got to take care of the needs of the buyer. If you take care of their needs, they're going to take care of yours. So if they say, can you do this, this, and this? I say, yeah, I can do that. Even though I typically wouldn't. If that's what they want, that's what they're going to get. So I try to be extremely easy to work with. I try to do whatever the client, the buyer wants. And as a result, they always think about you and they're ready to rebook you and so forth. So you got to take care of the client, the buyer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the UK, we've had a couple of trials of stage hypnosis on TV or anything like that. But I think there's a lot pushing towards YouTube, those short clips, a lot of street stuff.
One second. Stelly, come here. Oh, come here. This is my hypno.
Oh, wow. Oh, fantastic.
She actually comes on stage and hypnotizes the people during my show.
Brilliant.
She actually can be hypnotized herself, or looks like it. I'll say 1, 2, 3, sleep, and she'll just lay down, put her head down. But people love, pets. And so she's gotten to a point where she's become part of my show whenever I can take her. Brilliant. Isn't that right? Brilliant. Okay, go play.
Yeah, I think I once tried to train my cat to do something on the show, and my cat was having none of it. So we named that in the book straight away. Cats don't take too kindly to being trained. My cats have been training me for years. So do you think the kind of the YouTube, the Instagram, TikTok stuff that's out there at the moment, do you think that has a positive effect on the future of stage hypnosis or not?
Well, some of it does, some of it doesn't. And what I mean by that is, like I do a TikTok dance challenge during my show because that's really hot right now. And for the colleges I did. So every year you can take an old bit and retool it. Like America's Got Talent. You go to TikTok Dance Challenge. Next year it might be planking. I keep on top of things that are out there. And when I build a new show, I make sure I have those entities in there, even though there might be an old piece that was just retooled to reflect today's norms.
Yeah. I mean, that in itself is a great piece of advice, by taking something that's popular culture and incorporating it into your routines anyway. And especially with TikTok, because you're prompting the audience to then take that video and upload it onto TikTok, which is then advertising you. So yeah, I think you're right. The tools used in the right way can be really beneficial for what we do. But yeah, I'm a big believer. Oh, go on.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, you want to keep your show current and fresh. Now, that doesn't mean you have to continue to develop new skits. You can rewrite your old skits and do something different. And what I do is, like, if I'm in a college and I do a show this year, I'll make sure not to repeat any aspects of that show for the next 4 years until all the college students move through. But I might take a skit and retool it so it reflects their values. It reflects where they're at today, and they love it. Even though it's an old piece, it's got retooled and it's new to them, and they love it. So
no, that's brilliant. One of the things that we've got a clip on here as well, it's your kind of sizzle reel, your promo reel. One of the things I always push as part of my show and to people I speak to is the hashtag be the show. And my premise behind that is, if you're going to be on stage, if you're going to do it, then you've got to be the show. You've got to dress smart, you've got to look smart, you've got to put in the extra effort of the production or whatever it is to kind of deliver that to the client and to the audience. And I think you epitomize that. On stage, you're always immaculately dressed. You've got a great brand about you. I think I could have just put up a picture of those glasses and everyone would have known who tonight's guest was. It's iconic in that sense.
I was going to say, Grant, I go on a lot of college campuses and I like to find out what's going on. So what I do is I take my glasses off and wear a cap, walk around campus, and I learn a lot about the campus that I can use that night for my show too. But yeah, it's become a brand.
Brilliant. Yeah, exactly. And it means that it makes you instantly recognizable. You're not just a hypnotist, you are the hypnotist, you are Jim Wand. So I've got your sizzle reel. Guys, bear with me on this. I know Facebook can sometimes be a bit overzealous when it comes to music in any type of stuff. So if we lose the audio, we just have to bear with it. But this is Jim's sizzle reel, what he puts out there to help promote his show. So we shall see you on the other side.
Keep in mind, this is one for high school audience and also farm agricultural audience. I have a lot of different ones, but this is that.
Fantastic.
you waiting for? You can bang the drum, you can bang the drum. You can bang the drum, you can bang the drum. Bring it on. You can bang the drum, you can bang the drum. We will play along, we will play along. Bring it on. You can bang the drum, you can bang the drum. Bring it on. You can bang the drum, you can bang the drum. Bring it on. You can bang the drum, you can bang the drum. Bring it on. We will play along, we will play along.
Absolutely fantastic. Great music, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's and Ken has put up a great question as well here. She just put, your show has lots of energy in them, something you don't see in a lot of other hypno shows. What can other hypnotists do to engage that energy level too?
Well, that's a great question right there. One thing I do, and I don't know most people, I can't do it right now, of course, but before the pandemic, I always tape my chairs together, and the movement create, like if I have maybe 3 or 4 people on stage are really animated, the rest aren't. So all of a sudden you got people animated here, but you don't have anybody animated down here. So I kind of place the people on stage who are animated right down the stage, so they make everybody animated with moving the tape on the chairs. It moves them. And I whenever I go to a show like in Las Vegas, I know all the artists out there, I'll get hypnotized during their show because you learn a lot from the other side. And I found that a lot of stage hypnotists either say, one, they can't be hypnotized, or number 2, they're not going to be hypnotized by somebody else. But that's a great learning experience. So if you trust the person, get hypnotized any chance you can, because you're going to learn a lot from what's happening on the side. So yeah, what she's saying, I appreciate very much, because a lot of shows you see are so low keyed that it's good, but it's not great. So if you can add that element of energy in it by doing active routines that people really get into the routines, you're going to keep the audience's attention. And that's why the time goes by so fast. So she's absolutely right. Music, movement, getting everybody involved as much as possible, rather than doing a lot of individual things, even though you want to do some, but get the energy going and make sure. Now, I sometimes, like if you notice, if they look at one of my orchestra skits where everybody's playing the orchestra, I have a gal in front with a balloon, and I tell her to bop them on the head to play faster. Well, their eyes are closed during that bit, so I go behind them with another balloon, and I pop them even faster and faster and faster. So even though the instructions, I think, are coming from the girl in front or the guy in front being the orchestra leader, I'm also in the back, so I can create a lot of movement there too. There's a lot of things you can do to actually create movement. And let's face it, that's what people like to see. They like to see movement. They like to see energy. They like to see creativity. They like to see things that they can relate to. Like when I go on a college campus, anytime I ask, or any campus, any cruise ship, any casino, any corporate date, fair and festival, I ask them if they'd like me to do anything special. And you can always ask them what they'd like. So now you're pampering to their needs. And if you can take care of their needs, they're going to want you back. That's why I have probably $35,000 or $100,000 clients just from going back so many times, because I'm giving you something new, something fresh. I'm easy to work with. If they're not taking the chairs together, if they're not doing something else that I need, I'll do them. I'm not too big for that. I'll do anything I can to make the show a success.
Yeah. And I think you're right in what you said there about those points about making it easy to work with the client. I think it's very easy when someone's just getting into stage hypnosis or a couple of years into it to concentrate on just doing a good show. And that's important, but it's making sure the audience is happy. But most importantly, like you said, making sure that booker and client is happy, because that's where your second, third, fourth, fifth, that's where those return shows come from, which keep you in business. So
I have a number of shows, colleges I've done. I think the longest running stage stretch is 32 years in a row. But I have a lot of 25-year college clients. And they'll just, when I finish, now here's another thing a lot of hypnotists don't do, but I do. As soon as I finish my show this year to college, I have my office send out a contract for the next year, same date. That way it's fresh in their mind, it's in the file. And like the prom and project graduation this year, we had about 40 shows that we're supposed to have. Well, we already have all their deposits. So we're not spending the deposits, we're keeping an account and we're carrying it over, but we're guaranteed that school again because we have a deposit for them.
Yeah.
So you got to get in front of the curve. And a lot of hypnotists, they kind of lack in that area. They go in, they want to do a great show and leave, but that's only part of it. The working up to it, what you do afterwards, those are components that are going to make you stand out as a hypnotist, as an individual, as someone they want to have back on campus, etc.
I think maybe one in the agency as well gives you that business side of things as well, as in like knowing that you've got to get the client whilst they're hot. One of the things that I try and do is I try and be the first person on the phone. If someone sends me an email inquiry and I know that's a general inquiry, I know they've sent that email to maybe 10, 15 other stage hypnotists. I want to be the first person on the phone having a conversation with them.
That's right.
And 9 times out of 10, you convert that client. There's too many people that once they've spent all the money on the training and they spent good money on training, kind of come out of it and go, right, I'm now a stage hypnotist. I've done my course. I've got my certificate. And they sit there and aggressively wait for the phone to ring.
Yes.
And nothing happens, And so it's people they become disillusioned by it because they're not actually out there grafting, working with clients and trying to get them on board. So yeah, brilliant.
And it's interesting, Grant, like I've been doing it, for almost 33 years full time. All of a sudden this year, it's a lot different. The phone's not ringing. It's like when I first started it. So back then I had to go to a lot of conferences. Well, they're not having a conferences this year, but I get it out there to all the people I've worked with in the past that if we can do anything for you. And now I have 3 sizzle reels that show about virtual shows and show blended shows. So for the buyers for this coming next 6 months, they see those and that's what we get booked from. Because we can provide anything they want us to. The social distancing, any other the CVDC guidelines, anything they want us to do, we do, and that's what makes us valuable. Or the hypnotists that work for me, or work with me. I shouldn't say work for me. The hypnotists out there, they work with me.
Yes.
With
Terry Cook. Yeah, Terry says hi. Terry says Jim is a great mentor and a great hypnotist. I think the mentorship is such an important thing, to have someone that's walked the talk that can then pass down that information and guide people along the way as well. So that's a great thing. What we've got here? Would you recommend a person to become a stage hypnotist in this day and age? That's a great question.
If you do it right, yes.
Yeah.
If you think you're going to not get trained, you're going to watch somebody copy what they do, go out there and try to do it, it's not going to work. So you got to have a knowledge of the craft and also a knowledge of hypnosis, because people ask questions. Where did hypnosis start? What can you use hypnosis for? Et cetera, et cetera. And you have to have a good answer for that. If you do, they're going to respect you and they're going to be more easily volunteer to come up on stage too. If you go out there and stage and you don't make a good presentation from the get-go, 1, you're going to have a hard time getting volunteers. 2, you might not get anybody hypnotized. And 3, you're not going to have a good show. So, and it's going to create the lack of getting rebooked. So if you do it right, there's still a lot of opportunity and a great future. Granted, right now, it's a little bit slower, but we've gotten, like I say, I don't think other hypnotists that I know of are out there doing virtual shows, totally virtual shows where I'm here in the office and they're out there doing it. There's some that are doing blended shows. And I know of a few hypnotists out there that are working and they go in and ask the buyer what they want. And the buyer says, we want a regular show. So they give them a regular show. I don't think it's the safest right now in the States to do that. No. But they do that. So you do what the buyer wants, but I usually make recommendations. If we're going to come out, we're going to keep the social distance. They're going to keep their mask on. I don't touch them. If I do touch them, I wear gloves. And I also have a pool doodle, which is like a 6-foot doodle that you use. And I tap people with that. So as long as you look like you're being concerned, you're connecting with the people on stage, you're being safe, They like that. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of room for hypnotists, good hypnotists. I think there's our profession to some extent is being diluted, in that some people see it and say, well, it's a good way to make money, but they don't put the time or efforts or money into the training to become a good hypnotist. So just like any profession, though, there's some good teachers and some bad teachers. There's some, some ministers you'd like to go to the church service. Some you really don't want to go because they're pretty boring. Whatever the case might be, you want to do what's right for everybody.
Yeah. So we've got a great question here from Jeff as well. He says, what did you find is the hardest part about doing a social distancing show?
Well, the hardest part is probably no physical interaction among the people on stage. Like when I have the chairs taped together and we have 4 people who are really animated, they're going to get everybody animated, right? Yeah. So what I do is I put an X in front of their chairs on the floor. And I tell everyone when we get up and do dance competitions, that X is going to be where you're going to stay. So you're not going to, but see, a lot of people who do the stage right now, they're not getting them up and moving them, which you still can do. You just have to put certain limitations on them. They can stay in their own space. They can do, and what I do when I, like right now, if I'm doing the other night, I did a show for a college in my area, and luckily it was on a gym floor, so I had a big staging area, so I was still able to get 15 people on stage. I'd have 7 people in the front row, and then I had 6, and I had 3. Well, I put the people who are really good, once I got them going, into the front seats. That way the people behind them could have somebody to react from. So you can make any show good if you recreate the components. Yeah. And now what did I do when I moved the people? I had their chairs sanitized right away, so that they didn't sit on there where another person was sitting. So I went by all the CDC guidelines, but I got them as animated as I could. So social distancing, you can create just as much animation with social distancing as you can without it. So at first I thought it was a big barrier, but as I look at it now, it might be a little bit more work, a little bit more difficult for the audience to see everybody. But all in all, you can make just as good a show with social distancing as without.
Yeah, I must admit, I did my first social distancing show since we kind of went into lockdown in the UK back in March. And the client is normally the client's worth 10 shows a year to me, is this particular client. And as the year's gone on, they keep cancelling shows, and they were adamant to keep the Halloween show in. And I was like, listen, for me, it's better, it's safe, and we can do it next year. And they're like, no, we absolutely want to do it. We'll do it. So we did the show, and at first I was so nervous about making sure things would be right, and I was so nervous about whether it would work as well as it does, having that distance and not being able to touch them. But it was a great show. In fact, that particular venue, it worked better because there was less people in the audience. There was table service, and people were really focused as to what was going on stage. So it was a big learning curve. I wouldn't like to do them every week like that, but yeah, that was really interesting.
Well, you can't get quite the same. Well, without having the crowds interaction. Now, the blended shows where you have the audience, like the last show I did was a really nice blended show in a gymnasium where the audience all had social distancing intact. And it's hard to keep college students social distance, let me tell you, in the audience. And I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about people on stage. But I was able to maintain it on stage. And they did a good job in the audience. And if the promoter that was there, the actual student activity director, asked them to move apart a little bit, they did. So everything worked out really, really well. But you just have to go with the flow. If you're in a box, and that's the only way we can do your show inside that box, you're going to have issues. So you have to learn how to. When I first started, I had notes on the ceiling. I had notes on the stage floor. I had notes on the back of my hand. I wrote in ink, and I found over the years that that's not as important as taking a skit and getting it so it's workable in the situation. So I probably have 500 skits I can use, and I've never ever copied a person exactly what they've done. But if I find another person doing a skit that I like, I'm going to say a friend of mine in Las Vegas does this skit, does a little bit differently. But I looked at this, and I always try to get permission, or at least give homage to the person who's done it, and still change it.
Yeah. And sometimes you see a skit and you go, that's brilliant. This is how I would do it. And you can tweak it and make it your personality. Right. A couple of more questions here as well.
I saw Jeff Bennick. He came over to a fair stage training that I did a couple years ago, and there you're outside. There's a bunch of cows around. There's other things going on, but in a situation like that, I'm glad he came to that one because there's so many distractions, and a lot of hypnotists with distractions, they get lost.
Yeah.
And so I thought by that kind of training, he could take it back and use it a lot easier because now he gets in a group with 100 or 200 people and there's all the distractions aren't there. It's going to be a lot easier to do a show. So do the hard stuff and see what happens.
Yeah. I'm a big believer. I mean, training is the most important thing, especially for stage stuff. But stage time, actual stage training is the best you can do. Learning what we do in just the classroom alone, that's limited. You've got to be out there with those distractions, with something going wrong with the sound, with something going on in the audience, all those things that just when you think you're in this lane here, something catches you off there and everything's good. Sorry, quick question here from Spencer Bowers. Being an agent now, what advice would you give to your younger self when you first started doing shows? So I think that's from a booking point of view. What advice would you give to a new budding hypnotist about booking shows via an agency?
Booking shows yourself or getting an agency to book you?
I think he's meaning getting an agency to book him.
The best way to get an agent, of course, is a good sizzle reel. And even though I constantly preach, there's so many hypnotists out there that don't have good sizzle reels or fresh sizzle reels. And you got to put the work into it. But if you have a good sizzle reel and you submit it to an agency, even if they have some go-to hypnotist, they're going to look at you and say, wow, fresh face, got a lot of good material. I like that. I like what he's doing right now, or I like what she's doing. They're going to be more apt to give you a chance. In the States here, we have we have NACA, National Association of College Activities, which if you want to become a big college entertainer, you try to go to one of their conferences and you try to showcase, even though that's not as good as it was at one time, because now I think what happened with the showcases and also with APCA, which is another group like NACA, is they went in and they were given, during the day, they were given 15 minutes to do a showcase. And the bottom line is a lot of hypnotists couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So they ended up giving them late night showcases. Well, the problem with that is the buyers don't come to the late night, right? So you're there, you get to see everybody, but do you get a lot of bookings? Probably not. So do a 15-minute, like what I do when I go on a conference like that, which I don't. I got started in the college circuit doing NACA, and then APCA came along. But I would I'd say I only got 15 minutes. If there's anybody here who's ever been hypnotized on stage before, wants to participate, come on up. I do an instant induction. 3 minutes into my showcase, I had another 11 or 12 minutes to do material. Where a lot of hypnotists, they take 12 minutes to hypnotize the people on stage, and they have 3 minutes to do one or two things. It's not going to work. So you got to have the kind of showcase, whether it be a fair showcase, whether it be a cruise ship showcase, whether it be a casino showcase, a college showcase, a high school, whatever the case might be. I've done them all over the years. You have to adhere yourself to what they're looking for and build the show around what their needs are, what they want, and you're going to get bookings. It's as simple as that.
I think you're right in what you were saying earlier when we were showing that sizzle reel. That's your sizzle reel for that particular type of market, and you've got a different sizzle reel for someone else. I see a lot of hypnotists that have one promo reel that is to book everything, and it's a corporate client is not interested in seeing the same thing that you would see in the back room of a bar or a fair. So you've kind of got to make it as easy as possible for the client to see themselves within that. I think Anthony Gaylor. I was at a thing that he was at in Vegas a couple of years ago, and he said the secret to becoming a $10,000 speaker is to have a sizzle reel where you're on a stage that looks like you're being paid $10,000. If you're putting out cheap stuff, then you'll get cheap bookings. If you're putting out value and quality, then you'll get value and quality.
And some advice I can give for the new hypnotists out there: when you're making a sizzle reel, don't make one sizzle reel for all audiences. Make different sizzle reels. Like if you look on my website, I got corporate, I got college, I got cruise ship, I got high school, I got just about every venue. And then I also have video testimonials from people within each one of those. because you're not going to do the same thing for a corporate show, most likely that you do for a college show. I mean, some people do. Some people try to do a college show for a corporate show or a church group, and it's not going to work.
No.
You know, just because it works in one format doesn't mean it's going to work in another venue. So you got to make sure you know. Like, that's why I also research my buyers. Like, when I go on campus and say, yeah, you know, I know that your college started in 1856, and they didn't really take on this name until 1960 and so forth. So I have a little knowledge, even though I just researched it. Like, another thing I do, if you repeat visits with a buyer, write down some personal information on that buyer. Because when I go back to a camp, say, hey, how's Sue doing? She's a sophomore now, right? Well, I wrote that down. I made it in my notes. Every time I finish a show, I make a big list of everything I did, what happened with the sound, what happened with the buyer. And then when I go back the next year, I make sure and have that information, because I'm not going to learn that. I'm not going to remember that. You know, I might be a good hypnotist, but memory-wise, trying to go and remember that when you got everything else going on, you can't. So the buyer likes to make sure that you make it personalized, not only to the buyer, but to the group. Make sure that you keep everybody safe. Make sure that you add elements to their company. Like, the last couple of years, I've done the National FFA. Used to be Future Farmers of America. Now it's an acronym. But there's an oil company that sponsored me, right? Well, the oil company, I did all kinds of things with their product on stage during the show. Well, this next year, they wanted to sponsor me. They wanted to pay the 10 grand for me because I did all that good publicity for them. It didn't take me anything different to take their oil product and do something with it. But I had it in view the whole time. I did things with it the whole time. And the buyer was there, and they absolutely loved it.
It makes it about them. I think that's genius. Is that? So we got another question here from Hazel. Jim, what other than the USA, what other countries in the world have you performed in?
Well, I've performed in every state in the U.S. Multiple times. I've been in 14 foreign countries. Like, I've worked in Saudi Arabia, which is very unique. This is interesting. The head of medical services for Saudi Aramco Oil saw me do a local fair show when he was visiting at home. This would have been about 15 years ago. Wanted to take me to Saudi Arabia because they had 4 different installations. So for 4 consecutive summers, I went to Saudi Arabia. I made $20,000 each summer. I got to relax with them. I only did 4 shows. They took me around everywhere. They paid all my expenses. That was from a fair, just from a fair show. So 14 foreign countries. I've done a few through interpreters, which I think a guy in France a few years ago was messing with me because the suggestion I gave they didn't do. But I thought, wow, that's great, you know. But so I've worked in a lot of different foreign countries. I love to, by the way, because everybody has a different take on it, different take on hypnosis. So when I go to a foreign country, I find out what is allowable and what's not. Like Saudi Arabia, you have to be very careful. You have to be very careful if you're bringing women up on stage. Now, the nice thing was I was in gated communities, so I could bring women up. If I was doing, like, I went to the royal family, to the palace, they got hundreds of palaces over there, but to do some individual things with the royal family. But I made very, very sure I was very careful with the women, very careful. So there are different, if I do a group for a religious sect, I made, like the Jewish sects, there's some that allow women to participate, some allow guys to participate in different ways. So you got to find out what you can do in that particular situation to make it safe for everyone, but also make it appropriate. So if you do your homework, you're never going to do a bad show, and people are always going to rave about it. It's when you go in and think, hey, I'm a great hypnotist, I'm going to knock a home run, and you go in and you do something you shouldn't be doing in that situation, you're never going to be called back again. You know, repeat and referral booking is 95, at least 95% of my bookings, repeat and referral.
And I think with social media being what it is now, and LinkedIn and other kind of profiles like that, there's no excuse for not having a bit of background on your booker and on your client. You know, I always like to research them, so I know what television programs they're like, whether they're a cat person, a dog person, because I want them to connect with me. Because if they connect with me, then I'm the guy they're booking for the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So some great advice there.
And there are little things I'll do to my pre-talk. all the time, and I'm sure you do too. Like I always ask them who their biggest rival. Like if I'm doing a program GM and Ford's their biggest rival, I'll say the only 3 reasons you can't be hypnotized. 1 is if you don't want to.
Yeah.
2 is if you try too hard. And 3 is if you deal with someone who doesn't have a high enough IQ. That's why I can't do anything to Ford. Well, then right away you got them on your side early on. So you do things that try to get them on your side.
Yeah. And it makes them feel like the show is unique to them. Yeah, exactly. But do you know what? There's been some absolute pearls come out of this show tonight, which to be fair, I was expecting that, being who you are. I knew there'd been some absolute great advice. So some great tips. So you've already got how many books do you have at the moment? You've definitely got one other book.
Actually, yeah, this one right here is what I have out right now. And actually, if you look at it, it's only 80 pages. And I wrote this book for college students because college students do a lot with Cliff Notes. And Cliff Notes are very small, but it's an overview of what can happen. And so they can sit down and read this in 2 hours. And then there's skills in here that they can utilize for themselves, self-hypnosis skills to make better grades, to find it easier to talk in front of a group, to enhance in athletics, whatever the case might be. And they can sit down and read it in a few minutes. And now that I'm starting to slow down, like shows-wise, like I'll still probably stay doing about 150 shows a year because they're from repeat clients, but that's a lot different than 400 shows a year. So I have more time to do things like that. So like I said, I got 70 stories, funny stories that happened in the road, from being arrested to being bit to having to use first time I ever did a tour of Wyoming. Wyoming's a state that only has 7 colleges in. And I didn't have at that time, I didn't have a rider. And one of the colleges I got to was about 2, because I always get there early, at least 2 hours early, always. Yeah. Well, I get there and there's no sound set up. And I said, well, where's the sound? Oh, they'll be here pretty soon. So it got to be 15 minutes before showtime. We had 800 students, no sound. Well, finally, a guy walks in with a bullhorn, gives it to me. I could do the whole show through a bullhorn. Well, granted, the next day I had a rider put together. So you learn. Yeah,
exactly. We've already seen the hypnotic motivation. If there was one book or 2 books that you think are essential for anybody that's wanting to be successful in the business of stage hypnosis, whether they be hypnosis books or business and motivation books, what would those books be?
Right here?
Yep.
There's a lot of them out there. I would say Orman McGill is who, and I studied under Orman McGill a little bit. Also, I went when I first started, what's Harry Aaron's known for?
The scale.
Yeah, the scale. Yeah. Well, I've studied with him. He was in Chicago. I went and I spent a day with him. Every time back then, I couldn't get enough of it. Gil Boyne. I went out in California and studied with Gil. So I find that you can, one thing with hypnosis is you want to continue to learn. So what's the best books? I would find the people who you feel really good about in terms of what they do with hypnosis and try their books because that's where you're already going into it with an open mind. You already like the individual and you'll look and see if there's more you can gain from it. So a specific book, Gil Boyne, if you go back to Orman McGill, he's got the Encyclopedia of Stage Hypnosis. That was a tool. Dick Suppin, he doesn't do much with stage, but he did a lot in my career with music and with the metaphysical aspect of hypnosis. So you can never learn enough about hypnosis. Never learn enough. Keep trying, keep learning every day. One thing, have you ever been hypnotized on stage, Grant?
Yes.
Okay. Believe it or not, a lot of stage hypnotists will not allow themselves to be hypnotized on stage. Yeah. And you learn a lot from the other side. I'll give you an idea.
You learn so much by experiencing that being on stage. The amount of times I've hypnotherapists who go, I want to learn stage hypnosis. I'm like, have you seen a stage hypnosis show? Oh, no. I'm like, well, go at least watch a show, but at best watch a show and volunteer, because then you experience what stage hypnosis is, which puts you 10 steps ahead of everybody else.
And it's a great point. And if people coming to see you, probably when I used to do the clinical work, I probably had 60% who have seen me doing a show, and then
Yeah.
referrals after that. So yeah, get as much. You never quit learning. I'm always studying hypnosis. I'm always coming up with new ideas. I'm always trying things. Some of them work. Now I find that some people are afraid to try a new skit.
Yeah.
Because they think it's going to flop. Well, if you're afraid of that, then use a sandwich technique. Use a really strong skit. Use your skit you don't know about, and then use another strong skit. And then you'll find out very quickly where if you try to do 3 or 4 skits in a row that don't work, that's going to take away from your confidence, your show, etc. So learn as much as you can. Get hypnotized. I was out in Vegas 2 years ago. I won't mention who the hypnotist was, but I've been hypnotized by all of them out there, and they're all great. But anyway, at that point in time, this hypnotist had a space between the chairs. And I'm a very good subject, extremely good subject. And there was on the stage that I can remember because there was about 15 people on stage. He lost 3 of them, but he had me on one end, who's really good. He had another person on the other end, one in the middle. Well, by the time the show was over, you could see the animation picking up from both ends in the middle. Yeah. So it started to be a really good show. But I was so animated that when I leaned over to the person next to me, I fell right off my chair on the floor because that, which he probably learned something by that, but I fell off. I didn't get hurt, but I still fell off. So that's another reason why I keep my chairs together. And people ask me, why do you tape them together? One is safety, but the biggest reason I keep them together is if some people start to move in hypnosis, other people around them start to move. So you might have 3 or 4 people that are really animated. You space them out, you have your whole show animated, and that's what a lot of people, they work the whole show on trying to get people animated and let them animate themselves, but they work too hard at it. So make it fun for you. If you're on stage, Grant, having fun, people in the audience are going to have more fun. If you're sweating your, tail off and you're on stage and you're not enjoying it, and people know that it's just trying to make another $150 or whatever you're trying to make, they're going to realize that very quickly. So,
yeah, absolutely. But Jim, thank you very much for being on tonight's show. I will get this uploaded onto YouTube as well, and I'll tag you in the link to that and put links to your website and to your. Is your book available on Amazon or is it just?
It is on Amazon. It's both.
Right,
Kindle and.
Brilliant. I'll put links to the Amazon links as well to get your books as well. Guys, please follow. If you don't follow Jim already, follow Jim on his social media as well, and check out his website, which is www.hypnotism.com.
And by the way, Grant, if anybody has any questions for me, jimwandhypnotism.com is my email. Don't be afraid to ask me. I mean, that's what you learn. You learn from people who have been around the block a few times. I'd rather have you become a really good hypnotist and make hypnosis more popular than continue to make a mistake that you're not knowing why it's not working.
Yeah, absolutely right. I always say what's good for our industry is people doing good shows. If someone sees a funny stage hypnotist, people will book more stage hypnotists. If they see a boring show, they're not going to book more, stage hypnotists. So yeah. So
and by guys, the way, I might be seeing you next summer. I might be coming over to the UK. Got a good personal friend over there, so we might just come over and visit.
Oh, brilliant. Well, please let me know when you're over here, and I'll make sure you are shown a good time in the north of England, it's where the capital should be, but it's not. But yeah, if you're coming over here, we'll grab a coffee and I'll show you some proper Yorkshire sights.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me, by the way, and thank you everybody who came in.
Fantastic.
Things like this, like what Grant's doing, these are cash you should zoom in on because you're going to learn something. And this is a way to share the wealth, and you're doing a great job. And appreciate having me on, but I appreciate what you're doing for industry.
Oh, well, thank you very much, and appreciate it. Back to you. So yeah, take care. Good luck with the elections and everything that's going on there. Hopefully that will be a calm process, but I doubt that very much. And thank you very much, guys. See you later.